The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, hello everybody. Hello, welcome to Thursday's edition. I think today's Thursday. A Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation. I am Dan Besbris. There was an outside chance that we were going to have a surprise guest on today's show, but due to scheduling, we'll probably have to push that back to next week. Very excited that we'll be getting some new voices on the pod once again. I love there's something oddly satisfying. I don't know why. I can't explain why. Even a little bit, I can't explain why. There's something oddly satisfying about getting guests on a podcast. I feel like I've accomplished something, which makes almost no sense at all. But as the host and producer of this show, when we get a guest on, it's like, oh, I did my other job for this podcast, in addition to, 9,500 other things going on at Hoop Ball. But these are the two that you guys get to know about via the pod. Let's see, what's on the docket today then? So because we did not get a guest for today's podcast, this is why I hesitated to call it a full-blown mailbag episode until late last night on Twitter. I did announce it was mailbag day. Once we knew the guest was being pushed back to next week, we got some questions coming in. So the plan for today's episode is we're going to be taking a look back at a pretty big Wednesday, which by all accounts was actually kind of a boring Wednesday. Not a whole lot of stuff changed yesterday. That's what we're always looking for as we hunt for fantasy value, is change in value. The delta of somebody's value is what allows us to either decide that they're a drop, a pickup, a hold, whatever. There wasn't a whole lot of delta yesterday. Short card on Thursday. We'll give a quick preview on that bad boy, and then take mailbag questions to the end of the episode. See how far that carries us. It's Thursday. Tomorrow, of course, we will have a live show. That'll be at 3 in the afternoon. Myself, Aaron Brewski, 3 p.m. Pacific time, live on YouTube. Easy enough. I hope we'll see you all there. A massive beginning of the podcast. Thank you to everybody that got involved in our Wednesday DFS contest yesterday. It was Beat the Expert Day here at Hoop Ball, at DraftKings, wherever you want to say it takes. It's through DraftKings. It's a Hoop Ball contest. I don't understand what the proper nomenclature is. And it filled up so early that I didn't get a chance to make a lineup. I'm so upset about the whole thing. So I can't go back into the deal and find out how it went. I don't know how the contest went yesterday. I don't know. Congratulations to the winners. Upsetting to me. I didn't get in there. Luckily, next Wednesday, we'll have another contest. You can put it on your calendar. That'll be the 19th. I don't know what the deal is for Christmas week, if that's still going to be happening, if it's going to get skipped, whatever. I know that with DraftKings, a lot of times they're like, well, our traffic is actually better when everybody's off work. For us at Hoop Ball, that tends to actually be the opposite. Things are better when people are in their routine. When people are floating around with their family, they don't remember to check all the usual stuff. I know that. Honestly, I can speak from personal experience. When I've got stuff going on with family, whether it's weekends, whatever, I don't pay as close attention to everything that's going on in the NBA world. So I imagine you guys are probably similar. So I don't know about Christmas week. But next week, the 19th, it sounds like the room is going to be expanded from 50 to 100 officially this time, because we filled up yesterday by about 1 in the afternoon, about 3 hours before lineup lock. That room was full. Which means, based on, the trickle of folks that were popping into the thing, usually there's another 15, 20, 30 people or so at our current clip leading up to lineup lock. I remember the first time the room filled up, we had like 25 at about 1 p.m., and then boom, it was 50 about a half an hour before lineup lock. So I'm guessing, if I had to take a stab in the dark, that next week we'll get a 100-person room. May or may not fill it all the way to the brim, but at least that means I can get in and I can set my lineup later in the day, which is what I need to do. I got to do the podcast in the morning. I got to check in the forums. I got to make sure everything is going okay on the AV side here at Hoop Ball. And then by the time I had finished up with that stuff and made myself a lunch, the room was full. Oops. Oh, well. So So anyway, congrats to the winner who got a Hoop Ball t-shirt. Congrats to the second place person who won themselves a Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company gift bag. Oh, yeah, that's the good stuff. I almost feel like we could switch the first and second place prizes on that DFS contest. Of course, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, the title sponsor of all of us here over at the Hoop Ball podcast division. They are, not only are they our partner in this, but they're actually coming up with other ideas behind the scenes in terms of other marketing things we can do. I'm really excited to see how all of those go. If you have a moment, as I've said before, please do check them out. They are our partners in crime now for the foreseeable future. It's hawaiianisles.com is the website. It's a lot of I's. If you're wondering how to spell that, just put an I. Any place you think there could be one, there probably is one. Or, simple enough, just go to amazon.com, search for Hawaiian Isles, I-S-L-E-S, Isles, like islands. You guys have heard the word isle before. Not aisle like in a grocery market. Hawaiian Isles, and their stuff will pop up. Amazon's choice. They got the seal, man. I remember when Glenn over at Hawaiian Isles told me that you could just Google or just put them in at Amazon, and I was like, oh, okay, let's see how hard this is going to be. It's really easy. You search, I got as far as Hawaiian IS as I was typing it, and then it was like, oh, do you mean Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company? As it turns out, I do. Their vanilla macadamia nut is the best seller. Amazon bestseller. Pretty sweet. So check them out. Thank you to them for providing the second place prize in the contest. Congratulations to the winners of yesterday's DFS contest. And, of course, next week, and we're about to dig into the fantasy stuff. Fear not, we're getting very close. Next week with the bigger room, we also are opening up a DFS email list. If you want to be alerted when those contests come around, which are basically weekly right now, at least now you don't have to stare at Twitter all day and wait until you see the link fly by. We can get you on an email list. Let me know. Just tweet at me, at Dan Besbris, if you want to get on the email list, or go to the Hoop Ball forums, hoop-ball.com is the website. Click on the forums tab, and there's a thread called DFS Weekly Contest Mailing List. Just go in there and express your interest, and we'll make sure we get you on the list. We'll send out those emails as soon as we get the link every week, which is usually Monday night or Tuesday morning. Fantasy stuff. That's why you guys tuned into the podcast, right? I know I did like a 6-minute intro on today's show, and you guys say my intros are too long. Well, I got to give you a big screw you on today's show, I guess. Sorry. Yesterday, Milwaukee at Indiana. Were there any things we were really watching in this game? Well, there weren't until we found out Victor Oladipo was coming back. He played 29 minutes in his return, had 12 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and a three-pointer. He looked okay. Darren Collison slipped back into the land of complete passive basketball with 3 points and 7 assists. He was almost completely invisible in the second half. I think he did score his only bucket after the halftime break, but he had a rebound and 5 assists in the first half. In the second half, he had 3 points and 2 assists. So what do we do? Well, number one, I would say I'm going to probably continue to start him, because I liked what he did so much with Victor out. I think there's going to be some of that left in the tank. And yesterday, frankly, his teammates were doing such a nice job of scoring that he wasn't needed at all. They were great in that ball game, especially Thad Young, who we'll get to in a moment. So I'm going to still start him. I'm definitely not dropping him after one quiet game. Absolutely not, especially when we saw what he still had in the tank when the situation had improved upon itself. We also found out yesterday that Indiana is shopping Corey Joseph and Darren Collison in the hopes that they can clean one of those two contracts off the books, because right now they have too many ball handlers. They do. Corey Joseph, Tyreek Evans, Darren Collison, Victor Oladipo. Those are all guys that initiate the offense, and you don't need 4 of them on one team. It's superfluous. I assume they'd be looking for wing help, because they really don't have much on the wing beyond Bojan Bogdanovic, who, by the way, has been very good for them this year. His shooting has been through the roof. But behind him, you're looking at Doug McDermott and then nobody. That's it for the wing-type guys. The 3 and or D, as I'm calling them with this group. They're okay in the front court. They seem to be pretty well settled up there. Thad Young, Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis up front. They're doing their business. But they could use some wing help, or maybe they just want some assets because they have extra pieces and other teams could use them. we shall see. Anyway, you're holding there. And with Thad Young, who I admitted, I said it on this podcast a few weeks ago, I thought he was basically cooked this year because he needed to get to that 30-minute mark, and it wasn't happening, has not so quietly gotten things going lately. It started with Oladipo out. It started in spots where Sabonis was having either foul trouble, I think he missed a game or two with an illness, but Thad Young now has played over 30 minutes in 5 consecutive games, and he's been 100% a standard league value over that stretch. And it's not close. In fact, he's been number 34 over the last 2 weeks on an unsustainable 55% shooting and an unsustainable 15 points per game because of that 55% shooting. But the other stuff is actually not that far off from his normal per-minute production. And if you look at the last month for Thad, he's number 65, which is right where he was last year, and he's at 30 minutes over that stretch. It's the magic threshold with him. It's all about being on the court long enough. When he was at 27 minutes and you shaved 10% off of his production, that's a big deal for a guy who relies on super high steals to float what's otherwise relatively regular numbers. Low turnovers, 6-ish rebounds, about a dozen points, 50% shooting, half a three-pointer. When you add that extra 10% in, and the 10 points becomes 11, or the 11 becomes 12, and the 5.5 rebounds becomes 6 rebounds, and the 1.4 steals becomes 1.6, those little things push him up over the cut line. And it started happening. I didn't think it was going to. I had basically given up hope that he was going to get to that 30-minute threshold. But this team was healthy in yesterday's game, and he played 34 minutes in what ended up being almost a blowout. He was awesome. He's their best on-ball defender, certainly in the front court. I would say wing or front court. And so I kept thinking, well, surely that's going to buy him the court time that he needs to be successful. And it just wasn't happening for the first 5 weeks. And then all of a sudden, over the last 3 or so, it really has. So Thad Young, back to being a must-own player. I hope you didn't drop him because I know I said I'm okay with the drop. And he looks good again. Huzzah! We survived it, apparently. Thank goodness. Brooklyn went into Philadelphia and behind Spencer Dinwiddie's 39 points beat the 76ers without Jimmy Butler. This is big-time fuel for the you bleeping need me crowd on the Jimmy Butler side. And by the way, you have a little bit of a buy low window again because he got hurt. I talked about it on the ITL podcast. I bought him in another league almost by accident. I had a trade on the table that involved Jimmy Butler that just sat there for 5 days, and then he got hurt, and the other owner accepted it. And in the moment, I was like, you son of a bee. You shouldn't accept a trade when a guy gets hurt and it's just hanging on the table like that. He did it like 40 minutes after the injury happened. But then I looked back and I was like, you know what? If that's what it takes to get me Jimmy Butler a little bit on the cheap, whatever. Like, we get caught up in the day-to-day of this NBA grind so easily, but at the end of it all, it's still only December 13th, guys. So there's still a lot of time to make changes to whatever it is you're trying to do with your ball club. And if it's waiting a week and a half or whatever it turns out to be for Jimmy Butler to come back, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, what if he's back within the next week? That's nothing. It's week 9, guys. There's probably like 12 more weeks of your NBA regular season in the head-to-head format, and there's like 15 more if you're going full roto to the end of the year. So yeah, I'm okay with, buying low on a guy who might be a little bit dinged up. Over on the other side, Alan Crabb has actually shown some signs of life lately. In fact, he's hit double-digit points in 4 consecutive ball games, and he has 19 threes over that span. But over his last 2 games, he's also hit 9 threes on 19 total shots. He's 11 out of 19. That is not going to hold. We know this to be true. He is a three-point specialist in every sense of the word. In every sense of the word. He almost does nothing else on a night-to-night basis. If he gets you a steal, it's super fortunate. He might walk into 3 rebounds or something like that. But it's almost all three-pointers. So if you need it, fire away. I'm guessing he's going to be pretty available in your leagues. He's owned in 47% of them somehow. I don't fully understand how that's the case because, outside of this last, week and a half, he really hasn't been a standard league guy this year. And he will drop back. Make no mistake, because the rest of his game is fairly empty. But if you need three-pointers, he's on a roll right now, so fly with it. And then, of course, Dinwiddie at 39. That was beautiful. That was a monster of a game. I'm not that interested in streaming guys like Furkan Korkmaz or TJ McConnell. I think Jimmy Butler's going to be back too soon. But if you desperately need point guard stats, I think McConnell's the guy you want to look at between those two dudes. I know Korkmaz had 18 and 3 steals and 6 assists in yesterday's game. But on the whole, in a normal environment, his assists are not going to be as high. And McConnell has this weird, really good shooting point guard stat set where usually he'll come up with a few steals. He'll get you some points, some assists. He's the guy you're looking at if you want to sort of plan ahead and hope that Butler misses 2 or 3 more games or something like that. And I'm, very glad that I did not keep an eye on Rondé Hollis-Jefferson because he stinks. Done with him. Charlotte got a game winner from Jeremy Lamb to salvage what was otherwise a pretty quiet night for him. But that's not who we're watching in this game. We're watching Old Man Marvin, who fouled out. That was one of my concerns with this game, was that he might be dealing with Blake Griffin all night long. But overall, actually had a pretty solid game. He had 3 3-pointers, 9 points, 10 rebounds, a steal, a block, an assist, and 0 turnovers. Old Man Marv coming in hot in 9 category formats lately with threes and boards and a couple of defensive stats, and rarely ever turns the ball over. He's a 9-category asset right now. I know you guys hate it when I talk about Marvin Williams all show long, but he's a dude, man. He's ready to go. He's number 117 over the last month. He's number 100 over the last week. That's 9-cat. He's number 83. At number 100 over the last 2 weeks. Number 83 over the last week. At 38% shooting, by the way. So heaven forbid he ever gets hot for 2 or 3 games. That number can skyrocket pretty quick. He's a must-own guy. Seems crazy. In 9-cat. Let me specify. That's for 9-cat only. The Washington Wizards, another team we were keeping an eye on yesterday. Otto Porter missed this contest with a knee contusion, and that meant Kelly Oubre got 38 minutes again. 20 points, a steal, a block, 3 3-pointers. I mean, we don't need to go down this road again, but basically he's one trade away from being a man on that team. Jeff Green played 45 minutes in this overtime affair. He had 22 and 10. I don't trust that to be an every night thing, even if somebody gets traded, because we're still waiting on Dwight Howard. He's gone for months, it would seem. And Markieff Morris, who played 35 minutes in yesterday's game, usually going to get a few more shots than that. I mean, I guess you can keep one eye on Jeff Green. There aren't that many things standing in his way as this team is currently configured, but we've seen this story way too many times. The Knicks took, not surprisingly, Mario Hezonja out of the starting lineup and tried Kevin Knox, and Kevin had 19 and 7 with 2 blocks and 3 3-pointers. Interesting, I know. I'm still not a huge believer in Kevin Knox in terms of just sort of what he throws out there on a game-to-game basis. But if he's seeing a ton of minutes, then you have to at least give him a look because he's going to take a bunch of shots. He's going to score for you. And as a small forward or a power forward or whatever he's rolling at out on the basketball court, he's going to get you some rebounds too. Problem is, the rest of his stat set, pretty empty. Not many steals, not many blocks, almost no assists. Shooting percentage is low. 3-pointers it does take. He'll take 3-pointers. But to me, he's still more in that points league category than he is in traditional 9-cat. But he certainly deserves a look. By the way, I was looking at the wrong metrics on Marvin Williams. He's actually number 71 over the last 2 weeks, not number 100. He's better than I had initially listed, and he's number 61 over the last week. But we're talking about the Knicks right now. Emmanuel Mudiay had a nice little bounce-back game against the terrible Cleveland Cavs defense. The other note on this one is Noah Vonleh only playing 24 minutes. I'm a little bit concerned that as they just continue to rotate things around, he's a guy that takes a back seat for at least a little bit. Ennis Cantor played 32, Knox played 33, Hardaway 43 minutes in this game, Mudiay 30, and Vonleh was the dude who actually got squeezed out a little bit. He still has 7 and 5 with a 3-ball and 2 blocks, which salvaged what could have been kind of a clunker of a game. But I would think about benching him just while we wait to see if his minutes do come back. They did last time. They did last time, but he's had now basically 3 games in a row where he hasn't played the big minutes that we wanted when he was getting up around 10, 11 rebounds a game. And if he's not on the floor long enough, then a guy who, he has to sort of churn his way to value. Rebounds, some defensive stats. He's not going to score very much. A 3-ball here and there. 24 minutes is not enough for a churner like Vonleh. He's not a stat magnet out there. He needs to be on the floor longer. So if you wanted to bench him for a game or two just to see how this thing shakes itself out, I'm totally fine with that. I might do the same. Larry Nance Jr. did not get the start in yesterday's game. Channing Frye did, but Channing only played 14 minutes. It seemed like it was in name only. And then Nance, 3 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. He's going to be locked in here for as long as Tristan Thompson is out, and hopefully you have him because the pathway has been opened, at least temporarily. Alec Burks looks like a drop. David Nwaba came back and played 10 minutes in yesterday's game. I'm guessing that number will come up a little bit. And Jordan Clarkson scored 28 in an empty stat line, as per usual. That's the Cavaliers, man. That's where they are right now. You guys know my stance on Mitchell Robinson bouncing back to the Knicks side. He's a luxury stash, but I'm not advocating using him in unlimited games format. He just doesn't play enough. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on the Knicks again. There's another rotating cavalry out there. Memphis was another team we were watching in yesterday's game to see how the minute breakdown would shake out. They ended up beating the Trailblazers in a low-scoring slugfest. JaMychal Green had 12 and 6 with 2 steals, 2 blocks, a 3-pointer on a perfect 5-for-5 shooting in that ball game, and he's a standard league value. Jaren Jackson Jr. finally got back up over the 30-minute mark. He had 14 and 6 with a steal and 2 blocks, a couple of 3 balls as well. Marc Gasol was actually the guy who took a little minutes hit in yesterday's game with 9 and 7, 5 assists, a steal, 6 blocks, and a 3-pointer. So he did manage to salvage it, but he's not well. He took 15 shots in yesterday's game to get to 9 points. That's not a good sign. Joakim Noah only played 13 minutes in yesterday's game. That is a better sign for our big men, as they were able to use some slightly smaller dudes at the center spot. But if you're looking at Marc Gasol, this is absolutely a buy low spot, because his owner looks at this and sees the 9 points and 7 rebounds and thinks, well, what's happening to my guy? And sees the 28 minutes and thinks, what's happening to my guy? So you might be able to pry him. I just don't know for what. When I say buy low, that doesn't mean throw a guy out there who's performing exactly as Gasol is right now. You have to find someone who's performing somewhere between where Marc Gasol is now and where you think he's going to end up. So disregard the insanely hot start to the year, because, this is a what have you done for me lately kind of thing. Marc Gasol is still ranked number 19, even after this recent extremely cold spell of games, because he was really chugging before that. So what can you do? Where do you think he's going to end up? You might actually need him to stay cold for another couple of games for his owners to start to sour on him in any way. But if he's been, let's say over the last week, number 86, you can't throw a top 90 guy at Marc Gasol's owner and expect any kind of traction. It's not going to happen. That's not how it works, guys. But if you throw something in the top 40 range, then maybe you get an owner that's like, yeah, he's sliding, man. I'm going to get somebody that's rocking upwards. I don't have a name off the top of my head, but this is how you have to plot it in your mind. Then you go through the list of players on your team. You look for guys that are super hot lately, where there's this air of, hey, could this actually continue long term? Could he actually be better than Marc Gasol between now and the rest of the year? Those are the guys you have to use in these buy low scenarios where you know, because you're on the outside looking in, a very patient, very pragmatic fantasy owner, that Gasol's going to come back and he's going to be a top 30 guy when this is all said and done. And whoever you're throwing out is going to be more of a top 40 guy. And this is the opportunity to try to upgrade your dude by one round of value. That's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to turn a turd into a piece of gold. You're trying to turn a tiny bit of gold into a little bit more gold. That's how this works. Tiny incremental upgrades over the course of the year, and they will add up. Do it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, and you can keep upgrading all season long, and then suddenly your team is way better than when you started without having any total fleece fests. Don't try to fleece these people. Try to just do a little baby upgrade if somebody's getting nervous about their guy. Oh, other dude I was watching in this game was Mo Harkless. He was ruled out on the back-to-back due to rest, so Evan Turner got 31 minutes, but I am still very interested to see what happens with Harkless when he comes back. Portland's next game, I think it's a couple days from now. Double check on that. Yeah, it's tomorrow. So I was wrong. And then they have the 2-day break. That's what I was thinking of. So Harkless presumably will play in their game against Toronto tomorrow. But he's coming off a game where he played 31 minutes in Houston. And Evan Turner played like 18. He basically got the other ones at small forward. That could be a big changing of the guard for a true 9-cat type dude. So we'll watch him in tomorrow's game. Something to keep an eye on. We were sort of watching Atlanta, but not really, because things are fairly well clustered at this point. John Collins is just rolling at the power forward spot. Dwayne Dedmon is seeing most of the minutes at center. Kent Bazemore is seeing a lot of wing minutes, especially while Taurean Prince is out. DeAndre Bembry is not trustworthy, as I've said before. His turnovers, bad percentages, way down what had been a really good defensive stretch for him. So when the bad games come, which is what happened yesterday, it's really bad. Kevin Huerter played 36 minutes in this game. He had 19 points, 4 threes, a steal, and a block. I don't know that he's ultra trustworthy either. He's just not really a guy who's going to play a ton of opportunity on offense, but he has played 36 minutes in 2 games in a row, so you at least have to give one glance at it, but he's not a guy I'm going out and adding. No. Nope. Miami got blown out, so we didn't really get much more information from them. Although Kelly Olynyk still played well, even in a blowout loss. He had 14 and 8 with 2 steals, 2 threes, and 3 assists on 4 out of 8 shooting and 4 for 5 at the free throw line. He did it with only 1 turnover. Derrick Jones Jr. had 5 steals in this game. He was another guy we were watching. The Dwayne Wade farewell tour took a break in a blowout loss, so we'll have to wait for the next Miami game to figure out a little bit more about what's going on there. But I think somebody's going to rise to the top, and I'm still hoping that it's Olynyk. And if you were riding the Justice Winslow freight train, well, the freight train rolled off the tracks in this one. He had one of the worst lines of the night, thanks to a 4 for 12 shooting, 0 for 2 free throws, and 3 turnovers in this game. And this is why you just can't, well, trust him. You just can't trust him. I hope he bounces back. I hope he does. To me, he feels more of a points leaguey kind of guy because the percentages have always been so bad, and guys just don't change overnight like that. If it was at the start of the year, maybe I'd been like, oh, well, maybe he fixed something in the offseason because there's that uncertainty. But we already know he's still the same shooter. He got on a hot streak. Maybe he'll get on another one. He still played 29 minutes in this blowout loss, so there is something to that end of the discussion. So keep one eye on him, but let's not expect too much. Minnesota, the Dario Saric winning circle was outlined once again. He beat Taj Gibson handily in this ballgame. Taj had 6 and 7 in 16 minutes. Dario had 18 and 6 in 31 minutes. That's now 2 in a row for Saric in the winner's circle. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen at this point. I just don't know. I thought we had lined this thing up. I thought it was going to be Taj going forward. Maybe it still will be. You know, to be fair, Minnesota just played 2 of the fastest teams in the NBA in the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings. So maybe they just couldn't use a big lumbering power forward like Gibson. And as they get set up for their next game, which now we have to find out who that's against for Minnesota. When Taj, will he get a chance in Phoenix on Saturday? That's a pretty fast team. They've been playing who? Trevor Reese is out, so TJ Warren at power forward? That might be a tough one for Taj also. And then they go home and host Sacramento on Monday of next week before finally taking on Detroit, and that'll be a big, lumbering oxen Blake Griffin, and then you're going to want your power guy back in there again. So maybe we're looking at a matchup scenario here. Taj is back on my bench. Is Dario Saric a pickup after 2 better ball games? I'm not super excited about it. Even his good games, the last 2, haven't been that impressive. He has 1 combined steal, 2 3-pointers combined. He's shot the ball well, but that, of course, is unsustainable. And so then you're basically looking at a guy who's averaging like 15 points and 8 rebounds on a best day. That's not very fun. I liked it better when Taj was winning the position battle because at least he provided sort of the rarer big man stats and percentages. Oh, well. On to the next one. Nemanja Bjelica. Was this a revenge game? Maybe, I guess. Could be. Toronto beat the hell out of Golden State. Not much to take away from this one other than Jonas Valanciunas dislocated his thumb. That sucks. He's probably going to miss, one would think, a few weeks with this injury. Not entirely certain exactly how long that's going to be. Can you sit on a guy like this? So with Valanciunas, we're talking about a guy that was on a per-game basis in 9-cat, rumbling along at about a top 90 clip before yesterday's game. And he had been crazy durable prior to dislocating his thumb. He hadn't missed a game yet this year. He played in 77 last year, 80 the season before that. He has 3 years in his 6 and now change NBA career, seasons of his career, where he's played 80 games or more. So this is pretty unusual for him. I've got to think that means he's a pretty quick healer because he's likely played through some stuff before. And so to me, I think you're holding. I think you're hanging on to Valanciunas to find out at least how long the absence is going to be. If we find out that it's like 5 weeks, then I think you might be able to convince yourself he's drop-worthy. But a top 100 guy is usually worth squatting on for a couple of weeks, and so let's find out before we do anything crazy. That's the only note from that ball game. And that's yesterday. Quick promo note here before we move on to the very short Thursday card and some mailbag questions. We don't have a whole lot that we're pushing at Hoopball these days. We want you in those DFS contests on Wednesdays. And we'd love it if you guys would check out the in-season premium membership. I know you guys have heard me lecture you time and time again, but the December sale is about to run out. And as I mentioned before, you can get the rest of the year for $12. That is so little. I would love it if you guys would demo the rest of the season at such a low price. Or tell you what, if you can promise me this, then I'll stop harassing you for a couple of days. In January, when the price will drop, we drop it basically every month. If there's any kind of promo that runs, and I don't know what Brew has up his sleeve on this one, I really don't, that gets the price under 10, maybe it'll be even February, I don't know. But if we can get the price under $10 at some point, just to demo the rest of the year of the in-season premium membership, if you have it for the rest of the season, please do that. Because we really do, this podcast is free. It's always going to be free. The ability now to bring in some partners like Hawaiian Isles has enabled us to effectively now guarantee that this podcast is going to be free forever. But we do have things every once in a while that we sell at Hoopball, and that's basically what powers the engine for us. So I'd love it if you guys would consider demoing that in-season premium membership. Right now, as I said, you can get it for $12. It's $15. Use one of the $3 coupons we've given out. If you need one, just tweet at me. Whatever, find a way to get in touch with me or Hoopball, and we've got coupons floating around, hundreds of them at this point. All the guests that I had on the show, I gave everybody a coupon code. Use it, because from now until the end of the year, you're talking the rest of December to the middle of January. Let's call that 1 month. Middle of February, 2. Middle of March, 3. Middle of April, 4 months for $12. It's $3 a month. if you got it right now. That's nothing. It's a cup of coffee every month. Hoop-ball.com is the website. Click on the Premium tab and choose Go Premium. That's where you can see the options to purchase that bad boy. Thursday's card. It's a short one, and I'm actually not ready for a break yet. We've had this bounce back and forth between really big and really little cards over the last few days, and I'm tired of it. I want a medium-sized card every day for a little while. Lakers are in Houston. I know everybody's thinking about the Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo grudge match, but Rondo's still out, and I want nothing to do with this game because the Lakers are playing well. The Rockets finally had a feel-good moment in their last ball game, and that might wake them up. I don't want anything to do with it. What I will do is stream Josh Hart as long as Brandon Ingram is out. From a fantasy standpoint, that at least is what I'll do. Clippers, 2.5-point underdogs in San Antonio. This team is tired, man. They're coming off getting whipped at home by the Raptors first, and then if you go farther back, the Miami Heat. The Clippers are slumping. It happens to every team over the course of the season. The question is, how tired are they? Meaning, how can they fix this? I saw a tweet that went out, I think it was from a Utah Jazz person, talking about how teams just get sort of beleaguered over time, and the Clippers are in that spot because they haven't had a true homestand in like 4 weeks. And they have one coming up, but they have this game in San Antonio tonight. They play in Oklahoma City on Saturday before finally starting a true homestand on Monday, and then they can kind of catch their breath. So if you're looking at the Clippers, and it's been imperfect. Remember, they did beat the Phoenix Suns in overtime. That's how bad things have gotten. Since that win in New Orleans, 129-126, things have been rough. And I don't know if it's just time catching up with them. I don't know if it was the fact that Memphis sort of walloped them until they got hurt. But that Memphis game, they got creamed. Miami, they got creamed. Phoenix, that took overtime. Toronto, they got creamed. What I don't know is, has the betting market caught up? This line effectively tells us that the Spurs are actually about a 0.5 to 1 point underdog on a neutral site with the Clippers. And frankly, I think that's probably fairly accurate. But you have to look at what direction the arrow's pointing. And right now, for the Clippers, the arrow's pointed down. For the Spurs, the arrow's pointed a little bit up. I would look towards the Spurs direction if either of these teams, but I'm by no means sold on it. Because the Spurs are rested. They're on the 4th game of a 6-game homestand, and they've won all of them so far. Beat the Lakers by 13, beat the Jazz by 13, they beat the Suns by God knows how much. And so they're rested and they're well prepped. Greg Popovich just got that 4th place win also. So slightly into the Spurs side on this one. But I got to admit, I don't know if the Clippers are going to wake up in this one after getting embarrassed twice. Sometimes that happens with teams. That moves the line quickly. Chicago-Orlando, that's a ball game south of the border. So I don't have any idea what's going to go on in this one. Chicago's been a mess lately. Orlando's coming off a bad loss. No thanks. What I will say, though, at least from a fantasy standpoint, and same deal with the previous game, Clippers were always watching Shy. And with Lou Williams out, that should create some opportunity there. For Chicago, with Chris Dunn and Bobby Portis back, do their minutes come up from 20 to 22, 24, something like that? We're very close to having those guys be startable. But to me, not quite yet. Orlando, of course, Jonathan Isaac. I'll admit, I put him back on my bench for that last ball game. I really want to see this team settle in a little bit more. He should be doing more. He's such a difference maker. And I'm trying to guess what night things are going to be better for him. This is a night where maybe you want to consider using him against a bad Chicago team. Dallas is in Phoenix. This should be a relatively easy one for them, but, things are weird. That's all I can say on that front. Life is weird. Who knows? Is this the game where Phoenix keeps it somewhat competitive? Oh, who cares? Fantasy standpoint, we're paying attention. Rashawn Holmes minutes, D'Anthony Melton, Mikal Bridges, less so Bridges than the other two. Devin Booker still out. So relatively short Thursday card. All right, we got about 18 minutes for mailbag questions, so I'm going to try to go back and check them out basically as they came in. First one was I sent out 3 tweets with mailbag questions. Is Thad Young a must roster in 12 teams? Yes. Mentioned that earlier in the podcast. He's number 65 over the last 2 weeks. As we were saying, he's back to where he needs to be. And until the minutes come back down, if they ever do, he's a guy you need to be using. When he plays 30 minutes, he's a go. When Marvin Williams plays 30 minutes, he's a go. The old men have a cutoff here. The guys that chug their way to value, they need to be on the court. Guys like Rashawn Holmes, those are electric points. He just gets out there and gobbles up fantasy stats. That's a different beast. Is Terrence Ross worth holding? Yeah, I think he is. Honestly, I thought he was going to fade quicker at the return of Jonathan Isaac, and he has started to slow down a little bit because you just knew the shots. He was shooting an unsustainably high percentage from three-point land earlier this year. So he has been very cool over the last few games. But Orlando's been pretty cold over the last couple of games. So I don't know that I would necessarily just take the last 2 and say, hey, is it time to punt on Terrence Ross yet? Because the steals have been pretty good, around 1 per game. The threes have been excellent. He's a 3-and-D guy, and he was doing it on percentages that weren't killing you. And so unless there's somebody that you were really eyeballing, and I think this question actually from VP is about a 14-teamer, then for sure he's worth holding. In a 12-teamer, it's a little bit more borderline. Yeah, you can chase upside in a 12-team or especially like a 10-teamer, you want to chase upside a little bit more. 14-teamer to have a nice solid 3-and-D guy like that, he's definitely a hold. What are my thoughts on Nick Batum? Is he an ad if he was dropped in a 12-team format? Honestly, the answer is no right now. He's been a weird ghost of his former self. He's number 127 in 9-cat, largely because his turnovers are way down this year, but his across-the-board ability is not on display this season. He is fringy at best in 9-category formats. He's not showing any signs of life. Over his last couple weeks, he's been as bad as ever. So, not really. And he's coming off a 2-3-3 game in 31 minutes. It's almost unbelievable how little he's doing when he's on the basketball court. I have no idea what's happening with this dude. If he's like trying to stay away from injuries, so he's just not doing anything. But he's had 2 serviceable games over his last 10. So no. I mean, we know it's in there. You know me. I love guys that have a body of work. But Batum has spent so many years injured that to look at him and say, well, it has to come back. I don't know that it does. He could be a guy whose career is just slowing faster than most. I mean, he is, 30? Tomorrow, actually. He'll be 30 tomorrow. Happy birthday, Nick. 30's not that old, but when you've spent the better part of the last 6 years fighting through elbow and wrist and leg and knee injuries, then maybe it does age you a little bit faster. But something is super weird out there. He's only taking 7.5 shots a game. That's the lowest since 2009. His minutes are still where they were last year. He's just not doing anything with them. That's the huge difference. He's out there and he's just not involved. I will say, though, at the first sign of life, he's a guy you have to grab immediately because you know he can be a top 50 guy in a great scenario or a top 75 guy in almost any scenario outside of whatever this is. I don't know what this is. Is Kristaps Porzingis worth a pickup? No. I honestly don't believe he's playing this year. And so I'm leaving him on the wire. Rate these guys: Bobby Portis, Jonathan Isaac, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and Larry Nance. Well, so it's kind of a weird grouping because Larry Nance is going to be great for the next 2.5 weeks, but then Tristan Thompson comes back and he gets a hit, and then Kevin Love comes back 2 weeks after that, and I don't even know if he's going to play at that point. So let's go long-term for these guys, which puts Jonathan Isaac at the top of the list. Bobby Portis is probably second, Nance third, and Juancho is fourth because Hernan-Gomez is still operating on borrowed time. He, too, much like Nance, will disappear if the Nuggets ever get healthy. It's an if, I guess. We don't know that it's going to happen. And the reason Nance is ahead of him is because his stat set is just better than Juancho's. And so when they both go back to being pumpkins, the guy that can hang on a little bit longer is probably Larry Nance. Which player has the coolest name in the NBA? That's a good question. Let me think about that one for a minute. All right, so Mo Bamba is pretty sweet. Isaac Bonga is pretty sweet. I guess those have something in common, though. They're sort of musically inclined last names. Jaron Blossom Game is a pretty sweet last name. I feel like baseball players have cooler names because they sound like cartoon names sometimes. Like baseball parents, man, you name your kid and then you're like, well, you're either going to play pro baseball or you're going to be a long-haul trucker. I don't know which one it's going to be, but it's going to be one of these two things. They're all like, you guys remember the minor league baseball player named Jet Bandy? That was a sweet name. Basketball players' names are, I don't know. They're just like, they're fun, but they're not ridiculous. Baseball player names are ridiculous sometimes. We get that with football, too. Some football names are ridiculous. That Key and Peele skit, obviously, where they had everybody doing their fake names at the beginning, that I put a pretty good spotlight on the ridiculousness of football names. Let me see if I can come up with any other basketball ones. Hold on. I'll rack my brain a little here. Yeah, so here's the issue. Basketball first names are generally either foreign, like a European-sounding first name, or kind of regular. Like I think that's why I feel like I gravitate towards baseball first names, because they give these parents, baseball parents, man, you guys are nuts. You give your kids first names that are named after, like, fierce objects in society. Like I just said Jet a minute ago. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, there's a baseball player that's just named Truck. Or a baseball player that's named, like, Missile Missile Johnson. That's such a baseball thing. And sometimes it's nicknames, I guess. But basketball, I'm looking at like this laundry list of box scores, and there's a lot of Franks and Johns and Evans and Zachs. Okay, fine. Every other person in baseball is named Tyler. That's true. But when you're looking for a fun name, you're looking for a fun first name that pairs with an interesting last name. There are some interesting last names in basketball. We just said Bamba, Banga. You know what? I like the name Langston Galloway because it feels like he could be like a jazz singer or a private eye. Langston Galloway, private eye. Put him in a Hawaiian shirt. Send him down to do some Vice stuff. But first names, there aren't that many fun first names in the NBA. Harrison, Wesley, Dwight. That's not fun. All right, I mean, could be fun. They seem like nice guys, but it's not silly. I need silly. Give me more silly, NBA. So maybe I'll go with Langston Galloway or, any of the fun last names for now. But that's a tough question. I'd have more fun with that, I think, on the baseball side. I took too much time with that one. Fun question, though. Furkan Korkmaz or DeAnthony Melton? I'm going Melton on this one because I don't think Jimmy Butler wants to be out for very long. Taurean Prince has been dropped. Can I trust him again? Yeah, I think you can. I think you have to. Like in juxtaposition to the Nick Batum thing, Taurean Prince is ranked right around where Batum is, but that's because his turnovers are high and his percentages are not that great. But he's out there doing stuff. At least when Taurean was healthy, he was doing things. Hitting threes, scoring points, getting steals. Batum's just not doing anything. It's the darndest thing. All it's going to take is a hot streak for Taurean Prince, and he'll get back inside the top 100. Batum actually has to start trying to get inside the top 100. Question for my old pal Keaton, broadcaster for the Modesto Nuts. How many three-point contests has your son Asher won? The answer is none yet, because Daddy still beats him into submission. Boom! But he'll beat me soon. It's not going to be that long. Daddy's... I am, for a tall, gangly Hebrew, relatively coordinated. It would surprise a lot of people to know that, but I'm also not very strong. So it puts me in a strange middle ground where I'm really good at games like golf and bowling, but if I actually have to compete with someone else who's bigger and stronger than me, I'm doomed. I'm good at dancing, but I'm not very good at, beating someone in tennis, because they're probably bigger and faster than I am. Hoopball Neil's got a question for the mailbag. Old Neil Rochlani, my buddy. In a league that you are struggling in, I actually don't have any this year, which is pretty sweet. That's unusual. Usually one of them, things have gone horribly wrong. Knock on wood. What steps do you take to change the circumstances? Riskier waiver wire pickups, riskier trades, punt categories. If possible, please provide an example of something that has worked. That's a really good question for the mailbag. So, my teams tend to struggle when I have too many injured guys. Because I draft so conservatively, I tend to have a fine team after draft day. Usually I don't have the number one team, but usually I'm far from the bottom because my draft is not terribly risky. I take guys in the first 4 rounds that I know are going to provide a nice, solid foundation. So if the other stuff I do works out okay, or anywhere from bad to great, I'm still going to be in that 3 to 7 window in my league. Probably more like 3 to 6, honestly, because the draft is usually good, but not outstanding. The way that I get knocked down the totem pole is, and many of you probably remember this if you're longtime podcast listeners, I had a stretch last year where I had 8 out of my 15 guys out. And you just wear it. Honestly, you just wear it in that circumstance. If your team is terrible, like if you just drafted an awful team, I honestly don't have the good solution for that. I think in those spots, you need to start making 2-for-1s. You need to do something crazy, like mortgage the farm to get 1 or 2 guys that might be able to carry you, and then use your remaining roster slots to just go crazy on the waiver wire. If you're in an unlimited game spot, turn 2 roster spots into streaming things. You've got to win your weekly games played number in a head-to-head if you don't have a very good team. If you're in a roto format, then you just start rotating guys in and out, and you go for those super hot dudes, and you've got to be all over it. I mean, you got to be all over it. You got to be on TJ McConnell. Use him for 3 games. As soon as that starts to run out, you need to be ready for the next injury replacement. Because honestly, at this point, if you have a bad team, the last guy on your team is probably worse by a lot than the streaming options out there. So that's probably the best answer to that question. A few more questions here. J-Ball says, for the mailbag, who is a good replacement for Jonas Valanciunas? Assuming I need to drop him. Well, let's not drop anybody just yet. But I get the concept of the question. What about Cody Zeller, Rashawn Holmes, Jakob Poeltl? Would you drop JV for any of those guys? No, I would not drop Valanciunas for those guys. I'm going to try to sit on JV because I'm thinking we're looking at 2 to 3 weeks. I guess we'll see. He's a pretty tough cat. If we find out it's 5 weeks, then yeah, I probably am dropping him. 2 to 3 weeks, probably not. If you absolutely must, meaning if you're dead last in your league and you just can't afford any kind of mishaps, then Rashawn Holmes is my grab there because I'm going for upside. If I'm low in my league, I'm chasing upside anyway. Cody Zeller's the guy you take if you're in first place and you don't need to drop anybody. But those sort of run head-to-head with one another, right? So if you're in first place, that means you can sit on JV anyway. Let's remember, again, week 9. We got a long way to go, folks. Missing Jonas Valanciunas for 3 weeks is probably not going to knock you from second place down to 8th place. If you fall a couple slots, you work your way back up. And then a question on Nick Batum, but we've already talked about him a little bit. Everybody wants to know about Nick Batum, and I don't blame you. It's weird. He's terrible these days. Can Kelly Olynyk hold value with the team getting healthy? Has he earned more minutes? I hope so. Paper Vaz, I hope so. I'm sitting with him. I'm certainly not making any preemptive drops because he was actually playing 25 to 30 minutes alongside Hassan Whiteside. Not all of them. Let me dial that back a little bit. He was playing 25 to 30 minutes per game when Whiteside was healthy. So it wasn't together the whole time, but some of it was at the same time. He saw a decent chunk of backup center minutes and then a decent chunk of backup power forward minutes, and he ends up being a really good fit for both. So yes, I'm sticking with him. Can he hold value the rest of the year? I don't know. We've seen him surface and disappear before, but from a fantasy standpoint, he's one of the best options on that team. Oof, voice starting to get tired. I need a guest. Good thing we got Brew tomorrow. Oubre is going back to being inconsistent once the team gets healthy, right? He needs a trade to happen, but who knows? Does this mean he's not a must-hold? Well, seems like someone else on that team is out every night, so I guess for the moment we can sort of weather the storm. But yes, when the team is fully healthy, he will be inconsistent. That's the short answer to that question. I dropped him because it didn't look like a trade was happening any moment soon. But if a trade does happen and you're squatting on him, you're in a great spot. Is there an issue with Chris Middleton or just a down stretch of games? He was averaging 3 threes a game and recently hasn't hit anything. You're right. He's been awful. He could not throw a stone in the ocean the last few games, and his ranking has dropped to number 48 as his field goal percentage has fallen from 46 to 41.5. He is in a dismal shooting slump. Over the last 2 weeks, he's number 323 on a medium volume, 28% shooting. And despite all of that, buy low. Buy low. Throw a top 50 guy out there. Go lower. Throw a top 60 guy out there, see if somebody bites. If they don't, go top 50. Chris Middleton is a top 30 guy. We know it. And he's going to bounce back, and it's going to be glorious. So try to buy him at somebody a round or two later than that. You might have to ride out a week of this slump, but then you get the good stuff. Brandon Ingram was dropped in my league. Is he even worth picking up? If you're in a 9-cat league, the answer is no. Hi, Dan. I have Hassan Whiteside, which is frustrating. Do you think I should trade him when he goes on his next good run? I'm fine with that. I mean, trading anybody when they go on a good run is a good decision. Billy Bean it, man. Sell high. Question is, what can you get? People, I think, have an idea of what the deal is with Hassan Whiteside, so you're going to have to go look for the team that's maybe already punting free throws and sell him as a brilliant fit for their team because the crap that he does that sucks won't hurt him. If you take free throws out, Hassan Whiteside's actually been really good this year. Like, mind-bogglingly good. He's number 16 in a punt free throw build. Yeah. He's ahead of Karl Anthony Towns in overall value. Not that that's something that anybody would do, but if you can show them that statistic and say, like, look, if you're punting free throws, let me give you Hassan Whiteside. Give me somebody on your team that's better at shooting the foul shot that's, like, who cares where he's ranked, and he'll be better for both of us. That's win-win. That's the kind of trades you should be trying to make out there. Time to cut Cedi Osman. Yes. For Šarić, fine. I mean, yeah, go for it. Whatever. You can cut him for almost anybody. Cedi's terrible. He can't shoot. Worried about Otto Porter and his rest of season value. Don't be. He's awesome. I'll buy him off your hands. Is this actually a burner account for old man Marvin Williams? Yeah, it is. You got me. I am Marvin Williams, by the way. I've been disguising myself as a little Jewish boy from West L.A., Joe Ingles worries me. What's your take on his situation rest of season? I don't think you should be worried there. His shooting's just off this year, but he's still a top 80 guy in 9-cat. So, you know, not top 65, but a round and a half later, that's not that terrible. Ricky Bassman, my old buddy, used to do photos for us in Bakersfield. What are the chances of the Suns actually moving to Seattle or Vegas? 0. This is a ploy to try to get a city to pay money by threatening to leave. We've seen it 1,000 times, and Sarver's just the kind of dick owner that would try to pull it off again. Boogie Cousins for Kevin Love. Any thoughts for these injured players? Yeah, I mean, I think they're both going to be relevant by the end of January. It's going to be a long ramp-up. Kevin Love will ramp up quicker. Boogie Cousins will ramp up slower. He started already. Kevin Love will start in about 3 weeks. Last question. What would be the fantasy impact of the following players if this real-life trade happens? Corey Joseph to the Phoenix Suns? Must own. Trevor Ariza to the Lakers? Fringy. Top 100. KCP to the Pacers? On the waiver wire. And there you go. Mailbag done. Live with Brewski tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy your Thursday. This is Fantasy NBA Today. Oh, 3 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. Sorry. 3 p.m. Pacific. Live show on YouTube. I hope you'll join us. We'll send the link out on YouTube, on Twitter a bunch of times leading up to it. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a hoopball presentation. I am at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Rate and review the podcast if you have a moment. If you don't, do it a later time. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.